Okay, waiting for people.
Yes, Facebook.
Ok, come vedo, commenti, domande.
Comments. Okay.
Okay, here. And so, guys, we are here. We are waiting for more people now. We have a big guest here, so come on, move. Get in. Yes. As we announced, TAC Week started this morning. This is day one from an amazing week, and we start with the best, with one of my preferred colleagues in this industry. So we are enough. Let's start. And I have the honor to have here as a guest one of the top level worldwide instructor, tactical instructor, CQC instructor, firearm instructor, and an amazing man. Not only as a professional, but also as a human being, because this man, it's really an extraordinary person that I have the pleasure and the honor to have like a friend and like a colleague. So I have the honor to present you Jared Wihongi. Jared, welcome here. Welcome everyone in TAC Week. Thank you very much. First of all, to dedicate your time to this live. So, Jared is in the United States, and it's really one of the professionals that you should follow absolutely, because he knows his job very well, and it's a pretty solid instructor in many fields of application. And I had the pleasure to have worked with him in the past. The last time before all this disaster happened with this virus, we worked in Vegas, the previous SHOT Show. Before SHOT Show, we worked together. We had a seminar together, and it was a great experience. So, Jared, first of all, in this case, I'm going to make you some questions. I'm going to interview you regarding some of some points that I think they could be really interesting for our audience.
Sure.
Which has a CQC instructor and firearm instructor. Which are your which is your point of view regarding training?
You know, it's a great question. I guess, I mean, I could answer that in many ways, but I think the thing that comes to my mind first from my, I guess you could say, my speciality and areas of focus for training is an integration of force tactics. And what I mean by that is, most of my background professionally outside of being an instructor is in law enforcement, working as a street patrol officer and as a SWAT officer for almost 21 years now, actually. And I really find it valuable to have people learn to integrate the different force options, whether it's their empty hand tactics to their what I call contact weaponry. There could be batons, edge weapons, so on and so forth, into the firearms tactics. Because if it's one seamless system, then people are better able to process their OODA loop, their decision-making processes in that moment, and use the appropriate force levels to whatever may be unraveling in their front. So I think for me, one of the big things that it's not the biggest thing, but it's the thing that I'm able to help people with a lot is that integration of force.
I want to ask you. That's I'm totally agree with you. I think that especially with the kind of dynamics we can have in different kind of environments, because here is another point. Every environment is different. So every environment, each environment requires specific tactics and specific dynamics. And many times is most of the time is the environment that determines tactics and dynamics in terms of applications. But here there is a point, because there are many times there are a lot of dramas in the internet about which is the best technique, which is the best system. My system is better than yours, or because this is it's really something that a kind of mindset that, in my opinion, it's really bad. That's really unprofessional, right? Because in my opinion, there isn't the absolute truth, because every environment is different. So what can work in one environment can't work in another environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mission specific, training and tactics. And I use that word mission because, like you're saying, the environment may be dictated by many things, to include local laws, cultural norms, and the types of threats that someone may be facing in the area where they may be operating or living. And so, yeah, that's absolutely. And result-based tactics, I think, is the most important thing, because there's a lot of things that can work and do work, right? It's not saying, hey, this is better than that. Whatever you choose to do, train it and do it well and make it work. But if it gets the result you're looking for, then it works. It's good. But you just got to find something that you believe in, so that you dedicate your training time to it and make it work, make it successful.
You are an international instructor, so you travel the world as I do, and so you have the chance to apply and to train in different kind of environments around the world. Which is, in your opinion, one of the most difficult environment, or one of the toughest environment where you have applied in terms of training, or apply in terms of your profession, which is one of the environment, more complex environment?
I accept, and that's it's a great question, because every country I've taught in, from different parts of Asia, Southeast Asia, Europe, to South America, they all have their unique, in the United States, of course, North America, but they all have their unique dynamics. But one area that I find interesting, based on kind of what you're asking there, is the work that I've done in Brazil, because it's a country that where the tactics you're teaching people, they're going to probably use within a very short period of time, or they've come to your training with experience that helps them have a deeper insight or understanding of what you're trying to explain to them, because there's a lot of there's the threats there are very real and active, and so law enforcement officials have a lot of are involved in a lot of I've got Portuguese words coming to my mind now. Troca de tiro, ocorrência, and lots of shootings and things that will happen. And so the fact that it's so, everywhere I teach, I try to get people to understand this is real, and don't ask yourself if that will happen. Train as if it's for when it will happen to you. But there, it's easier for them to think that way, because they've either had it happen to them, or it will happen to them in a very short period of time. So that dynamic makes you take your training, me as an instructor, makes me take it that much more seriously, because this is life or death things for these guys. And, I want to make sure that I'm giving them the best training I possibly can in the short time that I have with them, because it will make a difference. Yeah.
Yes, totally agree. It's like Brazil is a kind of place where there is no space for fancy stuff or for lies, because when you have in front of you professionals that they apply every day in a kind of environment that it's really complex environment, it's really tough environment, you don't have chance to say nothing that it's not real or not applicable, and sometimes this is in the base of my experience, what I can say is one of my best luck was exactly that, the chance that I had, and I hope to have again, to train with some of the best professionals, so different kind of environment, even specific environment. But if I need to be honest, I have learned 1,000 more of what I teach in this kind of environment, because the knowledge never goes in one way; it's always two ways. So when you are there, do you think that you can learn from that kind of environment as well as you?
100%. You know, and is one of the things that my primary martial arts instructor is saying something that he would always say that I took to heart, which was you learn to teach, but you teach to learn. And as you said, I think in Brazil, when you're teaching, you're doing a lot of learning, because people will come up to me and during breaks and say, hey, this is something that happened to me, and this is, you know, and what you're saying, you know, that could have helped, or what you're saying, I actually did that and it worked, or and people will have input from experience. And so yeah, I think I without a doubt, most of my learning comes from my experience teaching.
Yeah. So it's not wrong to say that we are basically two professional students before we are two instructors.
You have to be. Yeah, you have to be. It's, you know, if you're not open-minded as an instructor and continuing to learn, then you're not going to progress in your ability to transfer knowledge to other people. Yeah.
So this is what it's a really interesting point, because many times people they lose a lot of time discussing about which is the best technique, or which is the most effective technique. But they need to understand that they could be multiple techniques based on the same general principle. Because the general principle is something that you can bring with you in your luggage everywhere, in any kind of environment. But our techniques sometimes are affected by the environment. So it's something that you need to adapt on the environment. And this is why, for example, me and you, we can teach in different way, maybe different techniques, but I'm pretty sure that are based on the same general principles. Mm-hmm. And this, it's why it's so good that we don't say I think it's important that everyone can have a different point of view, because different experience on the shoulder, different character, different approach to the material. So it's obviously that we need to say different things, because this is where we grow together, you know. And when we have the chance to exchange experience, information, even just talking is a big growth that we can have. So you are teaching all around the United States, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Which kind of courses you run around the United States?
You know, it's kind of a variety. I mean, everything from one of my courses that I guess has been most popular. Obviously, this last year has been a little different because of you know, pandemic-related restrictions, but some of my most popular courses have been, one has been duty knife as a backup weapon, and it's a very weapon retention focused course, but it's kind of taking the angle of using a duty knife to protect your weapon. And the NTOA picked that up, asked me to teach that course at their national conference, the National Tactical Officers Association here in the U.S. They asked me to teach that at, it was probably about 6 years ago at one of the conferences. And after that, I started getting more and more demand for that course. So that's one of many. I mean, I teach a lot of different police courses, edge weapon countermeasures, clinch fighting in a weapon-based environment where there's weapons involved. My firearms courses that I like to teach more because they are a little bit more unique, because there's a lot of great firearms instructors out there. And like you said, you know, there's that teach great principles and then good techniques that will adhere to those principles. But one area that I find that is, I guess you could say, a niche that I'm able to contribute to is what I call close quarter force integration tactics, CQ Fit. And force integration tactics includes close quarter handgun combatives. Basically that 5 feet and in, you know, 2 meters and in, where sometimes there's an empty hand fight that evolves into a lethal force weapon-based confrontation. Knives start coming out, guns start coming out before or during that clinch range altercation. And that's one of the courses that I teach often, because it's something I feel that I can contribute to efficiently, but there's a good demand for it also. So that's, you know, one of the things that my company's been doing a lot lately is teaching riot control tactics, and surprise, and I go in and I teach the hand-to-hand portion of that, weapon retention, batons, shields, rescue control tactics. But there's quite a variety. But what my specialization is that close quarter stuff, baton stuff, knife stuff, empty hand, and firearms.
So guys, in the United States, you have here one of the top level instructors, so be sure to follow him. By the way, following you, I have seen a lot of really interesting contents in terms of video, in terms of your by the way, many of them made by GN, that is our common friend.
Yeah.
And out of this, very interesting content. So guys, be sure to follow Jared in his social media, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and take notes when Jared has a course around the United States, because it's a chance to have one of the best professional in your. You are lucky that you have him there, and now I think it's talking like I am inside the country. So, but the big difference is that the United States are so big, so you can move way more than I can do it here in Italy. I'm talking in a small country. So this is and how COVID, how all this disaster have affected your job in terms of international staff, or?
Yeah, so it's I've been able to adapt, and I've been fortunate. I got to say, I've been fortunate because 2 years prior to the pandemic hitting, I started an online program for my martial arts association. So aside from my tactical training, I do traditional martial arts training, Filipino martial arts, the Pikiti Tertia Tactical Association. And we had I had a website called Pikiti University. So I had kind of learned about online formats for training. And during the pandemic last year, obviously I had, I think, something like 40 seminars canceled during the year last year, but I was able to quickly adapt, and we launched the program TRICOM, TRICOM is my tactical program, tricomtraining.com. And we launched that program last year, and it's really, we've had some great feedback, success. And it's really my tactical programs put online so people can get a good, deep introduction to the program, which would be supplemented. So when they show up, when and if they show up to one of my in-person courses, they've got a huge advantage. I don't, some people are able to take online stuff because they've got a good training partner and do really well with it. Others need that in-person training. So it's a good way for people to show up at one of my training courses and almost know most of what I'm going to be teaching and just be able to get some in-person training with it. So that's something I was able to do to adapt to that. But I mean, like I said, international, obviously I was supposed to come to Italy last year and we had to cancel that and many other things. So it's just an evolution from in-person to online. And when things get better, we'll go back to a hybrid system of complementary in-person online training.
Let me give this news to our Italian, I'm going in Italian now, to our Italian audience. Ragazzi, vi annuncio ufficialmente che Jared sarà, appena sarà possibile, quando la condizione Covid, le restrizioni per gli spostamenti del Covid verranno meno e quindi sarà possibile poterci spostare da un continente all'altro. Vi annuncio ufficialmente che Jared doveva venire l'anno scorso, poi è successo questo disastro del Covid. Con Jared organizzeremo una serie di corsi in Italia, sarà ospite nostro, quindi avrete un'opportunità unica. Faremo corsi dedicati al law enforcement, corsi aperti a tutti, dove tratteremo la materia sotto vari aspetti, quindi tratteremo vari segmenti di training. Per chi non Jared, I'm just translating for the Italian guys, for the one that they can understand English. Jared è uno dei top level a livello di istruttori internazionali di CQC, Firearm Instructor è uno dei top level, vive negli Stati Uniti, fa parte della SWAT, è un law enforcement officer, quindi è una persona che ha oltre 20 anni di esperienza nel settore operativo e come me ci siamo visti, abbiamo lavorato insieme. abbiamo girato il mondo insieme, quindi lavora anche lui in giro per il mondo, e io ho il piacere e l'onore di poterlo avere ospite nei prossimi mesi, speriamo il prima possibile, in Italia per alcuni seminari che faremo insieme. Quindi speriamo di riuscire a farlo il prima possibile. Restate sintonizzati. Jared, have you ever been in Italy before?
I have not. I've been all over Europe, but I'm anxious to actually visit Italy, not just to be with you there, but also just to see the beautiful country. I've not yet been to Italy now.
Yes. So you are going to appreciate for sure the food and. And yeah, the country is, you're going to see from another point of view, not really like a tourist, because you will be in a good hands. And we are going to travel a little bit from the north to the south. We are going to provide, what I said is that we are going to provide different line of trainings for law enforcement, for civilians, and we are going to provide different training segments in different applications. And it's an old project that we had since 2 years ago, but after Mr. COVID decided that was not the moment, and so we need to wait. And other question, I don't want to bother you and to take more time from you, but how much is important, in your opinion? I want to ask you another couple of questions. So, which is the way or the priorities in terms of filters that you can apply in training? I tell, for example, maybe to explain you better, which is the question, which are the filters that normally I used to apply in everything I do in this application, this field. First of all, it's okay, when we work with firearms, safety always first, and that means that firstly, safety is above everything, included the technical point. And this means that if we have a student, especially when you work with the civilians, you can have the levels, the technical level is absolutely heterogeneous, right? So you can have people that they just bought the first platform, the first firearm 1 week before, and you can have in the same course, in the same class, guys that they shoot for years and years. But as we normally apply is the weaker ring of the chain is what is going to determine the strength of the chain. Because if you push the level on the most skilled guy, this means that the weaker one is going to make a step that is bigger than his capabilities, his skills. So this is dangerous, right? So this is why safety is always first. But the second filter that normally we apply is always logic. In my opinion, doesn't matter who you are, not you in general. That doesn't matter if as an instructor, whoever you are, if you are a super delta or you are a law enforcement, whatever. In my opinion, everyone, every instructor or formatter that want to share information has it's mandatory to follow two principles. One, to explain why. Why about what, if I explain or I share information or I show a technique, an option, I need always to explain why we do this. And my main point is that my students, they need to understand the reason, because if they just copy, if they just going to imitate me during the course, but they don't understand the reason or the application of they can need, this for me is a big failure, because maybe 1 month later they are going to be on the range and someone asks, I said, why you do this? And the answer is, I don't know, that's the zero did of the course. And that for me is a big failure. But sometimes, and my job is to simplify this kind of material to let the student understand in the easier way we are talking about. But I always need to explain why about. And whatever I'm going to teach or I'm going to share must pass the filter of logic, because logic is objective and is aseptic. So it must make sense. doesn't work because why we do this? Because in Vietnam many years ago we did this. No, or in a last operation, a secret operation, we do this. Now it doesn't work. It must make sense. I need to understand what are you teaching me, and which is the principle or the real application of. Because maybe I just use one piece because for my needs, in the base of my needs, in the base of my application, my job, or who I am or where I am in the base of the environment, I could use just a piece of what I'm receiving from you. I can adapt the technique or the option, and I can adapt on the base of my needs. So I want to ask you, how is important for you logic in what you do?
Absolutely, and kind of as I would expect from an instructor of your level, you really hit everything on the nail on the head. The why. Like sometimes I call it the buy-in. I have to get the people that I'm teaching to buy into the technique, because if not, they go through what I would call mindless repetition. They're doing it, but just because I'm telling them to do it. But if I can get them to do mindful repetition, they understand what I'm trying to teach them, they understand the application, and now as they do the repetition, it's got meaning, it's got purpose to them. They're better able to get into the drill physically, mentally, and assimilate the principles, the techniques that you're trying to teach them. So I think the buy-in, explaining, why are we doing this, and that I think that's essential. And one example of that, a lot of the stuff that a lot of firearms courses I teach involve close quarter. Sometimes, like I said earlier, things that start with some kind of a hand-to-hand altercation. Maybe a knife came out, and I didn't. If my training was just to reach for my gun at that moment, action versus reaction based on the distance, I'm going to get stabbed. So I have to train to what I call self-preservation before weapon presentation. So I need to learn how to survive that ambush so that I can be able to fight my way to my gun, and either, depending on the environment, am I creating distance, am I engaging the threat, and so on and so forth. But I'll run drills with people sometimes with dummy guns, with a SIRT pistol, something like that, so that they can learn and see some of the application. Now, I might not spend too much time on it, just enough so that they can actually get a little bit of that physicality, and then I'll go from there into the live fire so that they can understand, okay, this is why we're doing this drill, because of that application. A lot of people, because a lot of what I'll do is train people to get comfortable in unorthodox movement and training and shooting positions. When I say unorthodox, things that just a lot of people won't train when they go to the range. So I get into, and for them to understand why we're doing these unorthodox things, we get into a little bit of the application first, so that the why is understood. So that's an important thing for me. But and another kind of another thing that I'll always tell people when I'm teaching courses is and you mentioned another thing. You said if people just go away and they say, hey, I don't know why I'm doing this, but the instructor told me to. For me, that's, like you said, that's a failure. I need people to understand. Well, and I kind of sum it up in two things. If people can walk away from, because normally when you're talking about these courses, it's a relatively short period of time. Maybe one day, maybe a maximum I do in recent years is probably 5 days, and that's not common. But usually it's 1 or 2 days. And so people, if I can get them to walk away with what I call a functional and retainable skill set. Okay, they're able to apply it functionally. They can make it work. They can do it, and they can retain the skills that we've trained. Right? If I show them too many things without a purpose for that, and they don't retain that information, as opposed to giving them some good solid skill sets that when the time comes they need it, they'll use it. They'll have it. Then that's more of a success for me. So functional, retainable skill sets. Two of the goals I try and get people to reach in these courses, and there's others also, but just kind of those are some of the main things I try and work on.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm agree in 100% with everything. And you said one thing that's it's so true. Many times I see training programs from a course that are very long, something that I can say, wow, how long is going to be this course? 1 year? And then you see 8 hours, and then you say, there are two things: or I'm completely out of my, I don't know how to do my job, because probably in 8 hours I can cover just the first 3 points. If I push a lot, or the other instructors are really someone's a phenomenal, because to do all this stuff in 8 hours, that probably require me 1 year, is about, this is sometimes what people want to buy, because many times people, they don't want to learn. They want to find a good reason why they have spent $1,000 in equipment and cool stuff. They need to apply that equipment, so they join courses. So they can dress like a super ninja for a few days, but they are not really interested on learning the proper way, in the professional way, because sometimes learning means it's boring. Because when you cover, and what my experience is, when I start a course and I start the intro, I always start to give bad news to the students, and I say, listen, it's better that you know all the bad news at the beginning, so next time you can avoid me, but more we shoot, less we learn. Why? Because more we shoot, less we talk, but there are tons of informations. And another genre, people are so scared about the word basic. When you talk about basic, it's like it's a lack of respect. So I love the word basic. I think that the base is the most important part. Which is your opinion regarding the base?
So yeah, and I totally concur. There's a lot of times I'll tell people, hey, I know if I say this is basic, you're gonna be thinking, so when do we get to the advanced stuff, right? So I actually will substitute, and I'll say, we're gonna call this fundamental, okay?
Yeah, or level 1. So
yeah, exactly. We're gonna use another word, because in reality, it's fundamentals that win fights. The basics, win fights. It's not that advanced stuff, And so, if you want to learn how to win fights, then let's look at this. Basics, the fundamentals. Let's focus on that, and the other stuff. And like you said, some people, people are in. If I'm saying outside of maybe the tactical world, the people that use these things as part of their profession. If you get more into the civilian world, and granted, it's a valid thing. Some people are there just because they enjoy it, to have fun. They're not there to actually learn a functional skill set. And so, hey, they're paying to have fun, but they want to learn things based on that fun that they saw on the last John Wick movie, and so. Yeah, I mean, it's so, but it's, people don't have fundamental skill sets first and foremost. None of that fancy stuff is going to help people, and help them if they, and so it's fundamentals first, and then if people have, gotten through the fundamentals, what may have seemed like advanced before is still fundamental. You're just able to physically absorb those techniques and skills based on being at another level personally, in your ability to perform on the range.
I totally agree. I think that the fundamentals are the key. Many times people think that I have a bet between a target 3 and target 4, that I sleep on the range, I shoot like 2,000 rounds per day, but this is a legend. The reality is completely different. I train myself traveling, how it works. So it's hard. When you train people, it's not how you train yourself. It's you train people. So you shoot to show some drills or to show optional techniques, not when you train yourself. It's completely different.
Yeah.
And my key is always to go back to the fundamentals. I always train the fundamentals. And I think that the key in a critical event is exactly this. If you have a solid base, really solid base on the foundations, on the fundamentals of shooting or techniques like a CQC, or which is your technical background, if you have a good foundations, this is the key, together with the capability of the process, the ARA, so the analysis, rationalization, and the action that you're going to find in that environment, in that specific moment, but in that micro environment. Because when we have a big problem in our job, because basically we train in a kind of environment that is a shooting range. When we use firearms, everybody, doesn't matter if we are civilians or law enforcement, military, or special forces, everyone trained with the firearms, trained inside a shooting range or training facility that are built for that kind of application. Provide safety if you respect the rules, because otherwise, if you don't use the firearm even inside the range in the proper way, you can break anyway the safety that is on the facility. Anyway, the principle is this. So we train inside the shooting range, right? So, but the big difference we have with, for example, the competitive shooters, with the sport shooters, that they train in the same kind of environment. So the training environment basically is the same, because we train on the shooting range, but the difference is that they are going to apply in the same kind of environment, the shooting range, because competitions are inside the shooting range. Where we are going to apply is a real environment, so that it's completely different than a shooting range. There is nothing in common between the shooting range and the real environment. And this is a big problem, because we train in a kind of environment, and then we apply in another kind of environment that's completely different. And also, on the shooting range, we have some advantages, like, for example, we always shoot for first. We always move for first. Nobody's going to shoot back, because this is correct, it's training, otherwise it's a gunfight. But those are advantages. These are advantages that we have on training that we don't have in real life. You said before, regarding action-reaction. And in our license, there is one word that is defense. The word defense, in this case, define the position, how we start, because we are allowed to defend ourselves, our life, or the life of someone else around us, from an offensive action, from the attack of someone else. But this probably means that the attack is already ongoing. So we are going to start for second and not for first. So we are going to start in reaction and not in action. And this means that we start with a negative gap, with a delay. And so our reaction, if we are going to have the chance to react, our reaction must be really effective in a short time. But this is also about our brain. Is how much time required to our brain to analyze, rationalize the information, and to produce the best action in that microenvironment. Because sometimes in our environment, in the urban environment, in the real environment, if you walk for 10 yards on the street, you can have multiple environments in 10 yards, because the ballistic environment around you could change completely. You can have vehicles, you can have walls, you can have a shop, you can have a crowd, you can have people, in few meters, in few yards, you can have multiple, something that on the range you don't have, because the ballistic environment is homogeneous.
Yeah.
So are a lot of variables that we need to explain during the real application. And we spend years carrying a firearms, but maybe we need to compete for our life in 5 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's I remember seeing a statistic many years ago when I was, a police academy instructor, and the statistic was showing that 98% here, I guess it's a U.S. statistic, but 98% of officer-involved shootings, the bad guy shot first. Okay, 98%, and so that stuck with me. I think I saw that at a Caliber Press Street Survival seminar, and that statistic stuck with me because, and it has become part of how I teach, because it's a very self-defense is very reactive. It's defensive. I don't go around shooting people, right? That's not, we don't train to do that.
You're a criminal. You are not
Exactly.
anymore, right? So this is
we're defensive. We're reactive in how we approach self-defense with a firearm, and as you mentioned earlier, there's environments where the mission may dictate something different and most of those environments are more military in nature. But in a general self-defense type of a shooting, you're probably reacting to someone's lethal, deadly actions, which is why you're shooting at them. And there's a good chance that their action, the reason why you perceive it was deadly force, is because they're shooting at you. And it's definitely an important thing to take into consideration. And again, those type of realities hammer in the importance of training correct, being able to, like you said, adapt to the environment that you're in, because you want to get you want to get base skills, but then you got to learn how to be, to be tactical in your approach to reacting to threats. And that may be being aware, breaking your tunnel vision and being aware of not just other threats, but being aware of cover concealment, obstacles, and things of that nature. So,
I totally agree. And it's very interesting to see so much common points. And you just said statistics. How much do you think are important the data you can extrapolate or debrief after an action or after a task, or even when we now we have a huge opportunity by internet to have access to tons and tons of real attacks, of real videos from multiple places around the world in terms of different action, knife attacks, gunfight. It's a huge quantity of data that we can analyze, even if we were not involved in that kind of action or in that kind of episode. We can debrief, we can analyze, we try to understand the dynamics of the action because it's important. And we did a lot. For example, we always analyze action or critical events like this to extrapolate useful information, to understand how many times happen during a gunfight that you are going to change a mag. For example, because this doesn't mean that probably 5%. And on the 5%, 80% of the 5% were law enforcement officers. So on the civilian side, it's very, very minimal, the percentage in terms of reload during a gunfight. Mm-hmm. So this means that we don't need to train for reload? No, we need to train always for the emergency or to have a full manipulation and full knowledge in terms of but we need to know which are the priorities in terms of eventually of a critical event that we can face in our daily life. Yeah. And another thing as I continues to see is that, in my opinion, there is a mistake in terms of in this side, in terms of the instructors. Many times we are too focusing on try to explain people how to manage a gunfight. That is something that is very hard because it's unpredictable and there are too many variables or too many parameters that you can't control and you can't prevent, right? Instead, to teach people how to prevent the problem, how to avoid the gunfight. Because the only gunfight you under 10% you win is the gunfight that you avoid.
Well, it's funny that you say that because that's almost word for word how I will always tell people, and then not just for gunfighting, but in all CQC matters. I'll tell people, hey, the fight you always win is the one that you were able to avoid, right? So that should tell you something, because no matter how good you are and how much you train, you can't control every variable. And someone comes up behind you in a crowd and puts a gun to your head and shoots you. If you didn't even know they were there, you're not going to survive that. So, there's things that are unavoidable and hard to train for, but the fight that you will always survive, like you said, is the one that you have been able to avoid in the first place. And I'm a big believer in that also. Yeah.
Even because sometimes it's the subject that is going to create the conditions to create the problems. Yeah. Because it's especially on the civilian side. One thing that we teach a lot is to have the proper mindset to prevent. Because the only way we have to change the loop action-reaction, where reaction is lower than action, so we start is when we can prevent the threat, we can prevent the critical condition or the parameters for a critical event. We can avoid, in this case, the problem, or we can, or we can identify the threat before become an active threat. Understand? Sure. So it's up to us, because there are many things. It's like a situation awareness. It's not like something that you can apply 3 times per week. It's a lifestyle, or you have, or you don't have. If you have mindset, the proper mindset, or you have the proper mindset, or it's not like an hobby. You can have sometimes, and a career firearms. This is what people they need to understand, that career firearm is a huge responsibility. But to be safer with a firearm means that you need to know how to use it first. That's very important, but also how to avoid the use of that, because be the best shooter in the world, but shit happens. Murphy is there, and maybe you that time and only that time in thousand of draw that day, you're going to grab your T-shirt together with your firearm for the first time and done. And it's you have one try. It must be good the first. You don't have the chance to say, hey, time out, let me do again better, faster, or that's it.
I totally agree, and training. When it comes to situational awareness and being able to avoid, there's a lot of things you can train for, things that are in your control. And when I say, and one thing I mentioned earlier, which was basically if someone came up behind you in a crowd and just shot you in the back, but people might say, well, then why do you train? Well, there's things, and most things are within your control, within your realm of control, right? And I can control the things that I can control. That's what I'm training for. And the first line of defense is, controlling where I am, who's in my environment. Maybe I can't always control who's in my environment, but I can be aware of who's in my environment, and being controlled and being able to understand how to avoid conflict to begin with. Maybe learning even how to de-escalate conflict. Maybe conflict started, and I'm not really trained in how to de-escalate conflict. But then some things are inevitable and unavoidable, and those physical conflicts. And while Murphy's Law does exist, and there's things that we are not going to be able to completely prepare for, I can increase my personal odds of survival from today to tomorrow through training. Right? If someone walks into my class and I tell them, hey, you guys, you walk into this class at this level where you are, and it may be different for each one of you, right? But my goal is for you to leave this class with a little bit higher probability of surviving a violent encounter. And if I've been able to do that, then I consider that a success. There's no absolutes. There's no absolutes. This is the world we live in. It's reality. There's no absolutes, but I can certainly increase your ability to survive a violent encounter, and that's why we're here to train. So training is essential for those reasons.
Yeah, it's sure, and there is also another problem that we as a good guys, we have rules on our training environments, right? And there are rules, safety rules, but we still have rules, more rules, even in the applicative environment, in a real context. Because we need to follow the laws. We need to respect the rules that we find. But this is just for us. For the bad guys, there are no rules.
Right.
So it's not a challenge. If they think that we could be a risk for them, they don't need to challenge us from in the front. It's not a duel, right? They just arrive from the back and shoot 3 rounds on the back. Period. This is why people die, because the reality is imperfect. The theory is always perfect and reputable, but the reality is not. But this doesn't mean that I don't need to train. I want to train as more as I can, because if I arrive from the back, done. I did all. I'm going to die, but I'm happy because I did everything that was in my hand. So but I want to be sure that if I have the chance to react, even the micro chance to react, I want to give my best performances in that moment, because I'm competing for my life, or for the life of my family or someone else. So I want to give under 10% in that moment. And to do this, I need to be trained. I need to train years and years. It's not something that I can do in one weekend. Because,
absolutely, it's an ongoing process. It's the perishable skills. And you mentioned just one thing there, and it kind of took me back to when I would teach, for new police officers, and I would teach them mindset, because a lot of people, you get people that have never really been in a physical conflict in their life, and they don't really know how to get into that zone of I will survive, and before that happens to me, I will train so that I will have an increased probability of survival. But one of the things that I used to use in a PowerPoint when explaining, mindset, we'd use Cooper color codes, white, yellow, orange, red, and black, and get people to understand, the different levels of mindset and whatnot. But the last slide I would use in the PowerPoint would be a picture of my family. And I would tell you, you need to, the thing that you need to train, we all have our reason to survive, right? We've got our motivation. Why do I want to live tomorrow? And why am I not going to let anyone take that away from me? And for me, it was always, I'd show a picture of my family so people can start thinking about their families or whatever it is that they have to survive for, so that they understand. And when it comes down to it, you need to learn how to be, aggressive in your fight for survival. But that's the difference between our type of aggression and the bad guys. Is our aggression needs to be controlled aggression. We do it within the bounds of the law. We know how to escalate force, and I will step it up as high as I need to survive. But then I'll bring it back down when it's time to bring it back down, and I have control of my emotions. But mindset is there's a lot to be said for a mindset and controlled aggression when it comes to survivability. Yeah.
100%. I want to one of the last questions, and then I leave you. Promise.
No problem. I'm at your disposal, so I'm enjoying it.
I'm very happy that I have so big guest like you. So one thing. Martial arts are they have created martial arts a couple of thousand years ago, right? And what we did from that moment to now is nothing. Basically, we didn't create any. All the martial arts are pretty old, right? And they have created when in a kind of moment where the level of knowledge, the capabilities, the sources, everything was so low between now. But in your opinion, why we didn't create nothing in the last 2,000 years? We just adapt on what they did.
Yeah.
Someone else did 1,000 years ago. And in what your opinion, why?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's a topic I enjoy, because I enjoy understanding and studying warrior cultures from around the world, because pretty much, most every culture has had some kind of warrior subclass, because if the people from the other tribe or the other village or the other kingdom come and attack us, we need to be able to protect ourselves. Yeah. And maybe we were a part of a culture that wanted to take territory, and so we had to be able to be prepared to do that. So every culture has had, like you said, thousands of years of trial and error. And when it comes to warrior, subcultures, when every warrior subculture had to learn how to. The nature of warfare is the utilization of weaponry, right? If I was going to learn to defend my village or my tribe, I wasn't going to just use my hands to do that. I was going to find something, make it as deadly as I could, and then learn how to use that. And so over time, people evolved and learned things that, and actually through probably a more stressful and frequent environment than we live in today. So things that when it comes to the martial arts, specifically outside of the firearms realm, just physical martial arts, I mean, the body, people have learned what direction the body should not go in, and how to injure people or corrupt the body by making it do things it shouldn't do. People have learned to use weapons to create trauma. They've learned to use their empty hands to create trauma, and they've developed really good ways to do that. And so what we're doing now is just learning to take what has been learned. We're not reinventing the wheel with martial arts, but we're learning to make it relevant to the environment we live in today. We don't walk around with swords anymore, right? So maybe I'll walk around with a gun if it's legal in the place that I live, or it's part of my profession, or maybe I don't. But I need to be able to train to protect myself based on what the reality is of the environment that I live in. And like I said, it's basic. All we're doing today is just adapting what was learned at one time and bring it in today. And one more thing on that is, if you look at because kind of like how I teach, I have my martial arts organization for people who will go and train martial arts on a regular basis. I have my TRICOM program, which is more for a lot of professionals, law enforcement, military, or even maybe a civilian that just wants some good, solid self-defense skill, but doesn't have the time or maybe the motivation to dedicate to that high level of martial arts. And so if you think about, hundreds or thousands of years ago, there were, I have no doubt that there were people that they say, hey, I like those martial arts. I'm gonna learn the rest of our cultural wrestling art or our cultural fighting art. But then there were the farmers, and there were the fishermen and the people that had to be called upon in times of war and had to be trained to fight for the tribe or the village or whatnot. And so they also had to be trained in something, but probably not to the degree of this warrior subclass. And so the martial arts, you'll find kind of different, today even, you'll find these two different environments, those that will dedicate themselves to regular training, and then you'll find those that are just going to be trained to the degree that they're going to be competent, they're the warrior in the garden and not just the gardener in a war type of a thing. And so so that it's that, everyone being trained in something. So there's so that's when it comes to martial arts, you've got these kind of two different approaches to it, but we're not doing anything new. We're just taking what has been done and learning how to apply it through our day to day. Yeah.
You don't think that we become too lazy to research, because sometimes research mean to fail and mean to spend a lot of time and then fail on what we are looking for, or I think that also people are so scared about new things. When something is new, this is the history that teach this. One time we thought that the earth was flat, but wasn't. But the first man that, by the way, was one of us, that arrived and said, "Hey,
Galileo."
Yeah, maybe it's not flat. Everybody is looking at him, man. They want to kill him, right? So this is how they are scared about new. The new, it's something that it's always so scared for a community. When you have a solid principle, nothing new is accepted. To require years and years of application or real proofs. Otherwise, it's so hard. I'm reading some questions. Some people that they want to ask some questions. Scacchi, sì, puoi fare una domanda, falla. Hello, okay. Guys, if you have some question for Jared, right, brothers, stay safe, time for a nap. Okay, Rihanna, saluto da Colombia, un saluto dall'Italia, Francesco Carosella. Okay, saluto from Mexico. We have a lot of country. You guys, Shark, have you guys ever done classes? Oh, okay. I don't know how to fight a close quarter attack while also protecting family members from the attacker. Maybe, yes, Jared, probably.
Yeah.
You guys rock. Have you guys ever done classes on how to fight off a close quarters attack while also protecting family members from the attacker?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, this is something that I'll address, because when I get into CQC, close quarter combat, tactics, and I'll tell people, you're gonna, at some point, there's a crossroads that you have to, in that fight, right? Maybe it's before the physical conflict, or maybe it's after the initial contact with the subject. But at some point, you have to make a decision whether you're going to engage the threat, meaning physically stay in contact distance, or whether you're going to disengage. And for example, if I'm in an open area and someone attacked me with a knife, if I was able to defend against that and create distance equals time. It equals time to react, to process my OODA loop, to access weapons. So sometimes it's your friend. Other situations, I may be in an open space, but my family is with me, and so disengaging no longer becomes an option. So what do I do in that situation? I can't just disengage and leave my family to be attacked by someone. So these types of tactics that involve protecting third party, and this is something that executive protection professionals really specialize in: third party protection. They're protecting a principal. That's what they train to do, and there's a lot of tactics out there for that. And it's something that, when I teach close quarter gun work, that I do address, is that situation where I cannot disengage from that subject. Third party intervention. Sometimes I'm not the subject of the attack. A third party is a member of my family, and how do I now I'm not defending myself, but I'm defending someone else. And how do I approach that? And and particularly when you're talking about firearms and you're looking at crossfire type, friendly fire type situations. So that it's an important thing to think about, and it's an important thing to train. Absolutely.
So, do you run courses, CQC courses for like family strategies or something like that in the United States?
Yeah. So I do courses that, and a lot of times when we do these courses, I'll use things like cert pistols, because it's better, it's safer to work with groups and things like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll use these types of training tools to run these types of courses, but it's kind of interesting because when I left law enforcement and back in full-time law enforcement, I still am a reserve SWAT operator in a local city, but I left full-time police work back in 2000, around 2009. And I was used to teaching, and I was doing military contracts at the time too, teaching CQC to local special forces units. And so I was used to teaching cops and soldiers. And then when I started to evolve into teaching civilians who wanted that kind of training, I had to learn how to teach civilians because it was different for me. I wasn't used to the rules of engagement and the environment. And so I had to learn to adapt. But that's something that came about was, things such as protecting a family and things of that nature.
Yeah, sometimes this is absolutely true. It's hard because when you pass from special forces or anyway law enforcement officers to straight to civilians, and you need to reset, you need to calibrate even the way you approach, because the cases are completely different, because the mindset is different, because the knowledge probably is different, except if they are part of law enforcement or military and they came in private. But anyway, and I think that the home defense is probably one of the most difficult things that we can face in terms of critical event, because close spaces. And when I was in the United States teaching in different places, I remember Pittsburgh last time at the USCCA. During the class, some of the people say, "Yeah, but it's I'm pretty sure about my house because I know that environment. I can move with no light. I know perfectly." Yes, but you make a mistake. You already made a mistake when you talk about your house, because when someone is already penetrating your house, it's not anymore your house. It's your house, because that become an accepted space where you're going to have a confrontation, where you're going to compete for your life. You know the environment, but it's not only anymore your environment. Someone is already inside your environment. And at that point, it become an aseptic space, because you don't know where. And another huge problem, it's exactly the family, because you could be trained as a hell, but if they are not trained for that, the first round is going to be shot inside a house. I don't know which will be the reaction of the rest of the family, and where are located between the threat and you, or which is the threat, which is the position of the threat. If, for example, there is the threat is already inside the night zone, or which are where are the bedrooms, So it's hard, because they're the collateral. There are tons of variables and parameters that you need to control, because it's really a difficult environment, a complex environment to manage a firearm in a so short space with no light, with different starting conditions, because the opponent probably arrived full of adrenaline, noradrenaline, in the top level of the capability of performance, and probably you are unconscious because you were sleeping, right? So you need to start to react in a frame of second. You receive the stressors, then you need to find your firearm. You need to start to move in low light conditions. So this means that you need to be trained in low light. You need to be trained in CQB. You need to be trained. You need to have a perfect manipulation. It's really a tough condition. It's not easy at the home defense, right?
Exactly, and there's having. And when it comes to training in home defense, it's a team thing, and part of a team may be an infant, maybe a teenager, maybe and so there's your mission may be to just get out. Your mission may be to stronghold. Your mission may be to collect your family and exfiltrate. Your mission may be to seek and destroy, look for whoever's penetrated your environment. And it might not be the same every time. So being able to train to each of those variables is essential. And like you said, it's not like just I know how to shoot. I've got some room clearing tactics down. Now I'm ready to defend my house, because there's a lot more involved than just that.
100%. I'm reading so this is in Italian. I'm going to answer, because he asked me to answer in Italian. Allora, Scacchi, sì, ovviamente durante la fisiologia dello stress è chiara in materia, c'è un'ampia riduzione di tutta la parte sensoriale, quindi c'è un'inversione del cono visivo, c'è una riduzione, anche se inizialmente ci può essere una fase di dilatazione pupillare, c'è una riduzione, poi un'inversione del cono visivo, quindi quella che viene definita visione a tunnel, c'è un'alterazione della frequenza cardiaca indipendentemente da quello che è l'attività motoria, c'è ovviamente l'alterazione del ciclo dell'ossigeno, c'è un processo di vasocostrizione, sono tante le conseguenze dello stress, e non solo per il soldato, ma per chiunque viene coinvolto in un evento critico che prevede una fase acuta di stress. Maggiore l'intensità della fase e ovviamente maggiore la possibilità del colpo di stress, che porta poi tutta una serie di patologie. Un po' complesso. Spero di averti risposto in maniera bignami, però questa. Sorry for it was a question regarding the physiology of stress. What happened in terms of the alteration, and I explained it very fast, which are the consequences of to be involved in a stress hit, in a stress stroke, and that's it. Conservative City, what's this? Living in stronger conservative in Washington State, and our local representative has not locked down our business because of COVID. Like life is normal for here for us. I think it is not for a question. Sorry. So, guys, I think that we already took too much time from Jared.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Really, really a big pleasure to have you here. I hope that this is the first of many others appointments.
Me too.
Exchange more often our ideas and opinions regarding this industry, regarding training, regarding our life. Your preferred food, which is your preferred plate?
I love food. In fact, for my anniversary a few days ago, my wife and I went to a local Italian restaurant. So we really enjoy Italian food. So good question. I don't really have a favorite. I love food, especially when I'm traveling. I like to experiment with local cuisine. Yeah.
Okay, be ready for Italy.
I will.
No, you're never going to forget anymore that kind of experience. So again, guys, Jared Wihongi is a top-level international firearm and CQC instructors. Is in the United States. So guys, in the United States, be sure when Jared is going to run a course around the United States, don't miss this chance, because you are going to train with one of the top-level instructors in this industry. It's a role model, this guy. So be sure to follow him. For the Italian guys, ragazzi, Jared sarà presto in Italia. Jared will be in Italy pretty soon. As soon will be possible to organize some courses, and we have a big responsibility because we need to show the country, show the food. We are going from the north to the south. It's going to be a long tour, and it's going to be a great experience. We wait you there. A lot of training. So if you want to train hard, it's going to be a good chance. Jared, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
First person as soon as possible and give you a big hug. For now, good luck for everything. Please, you are in social media, Jared Wihongi on Facebook, on the page, on Instagram, YouTube, tricom.com. It's
tricomtraining.com, yeah.
Okay, tricomtraining.com to subscribe for any training programs and all the stuff you can find there. So don't miss the opportunity with this profession. Thank you for your time.
My friend, I appreciate it. It's been a privilege and an honor. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Appreciate
Bye.
it.
Bye, Jared. Bye, 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 bye.